Rogue One almost had a much worse ending, but sometimes the most obvious choice is the right one. Andor returns for season 2 today, so here are some things I bet you never knew about its originator, Rogue One, a Star Wars story. The story behind Rogue One starts in the mid-2000s when George Lucas was wrapping up the prequels. At the time, he was planning for his next big Star Wars project to be Star Wars Underworld, a dark and gritty TV series that would have explored some hidden corners of the galaxy. It never got off the ground due to big budget concerns, and officially died when Disney bought Lucasfilm, but for a while there in the 2000s, it seemed George Lucas was open to story ideas. Because in 2003, John Knoll, who was the visual effects supervisor on all 3 prequel movies, came to George with an idea for an episode of Underworld. He called his premise Destroyer of Worlds, based on the famous J. Robert Oppenheimer quote, and it focused on how the Death Star came to be and a Mission Impossible-style story involving the Death Star schematics. Oppenheimer, by the way, would later serve as the inspiration for Rogue One's Galen Erso, a scientist who created the Death Star's WMD. Anyway, John Knoll soon dropped the idea when he learned that the Underworld TV show wouldn't line up with a pre-New Hope time period. Fast forward to 2012, Disney buys Lucasfilm for $4 billion, and it announces it'll be making some standalone Star Wars movies alongside a new sequel trilogy. Knoll heard this and thought, that original idea could make a good standalone film. If I don't pitch it, I'll always wonder what might have happened if I had. So Knoll once again pitched Destroyer of Worlds to Lucasfilm, and they liked it. It became the basis for Rogue One, and Knoll has a story by credit on the movie. While 1960s mission-based movies about World War II also served as a major inspiration. Lucasfilm story group contributor Pablo Hidalgo says The Guns of Navarone, 1961, and Where Eagles Dare from 1968 were discussed during development of Rogue One. In May 2014, Disney announced that Monsters and Godzilla director Gareth Edwards would be directing a Star Wars spin-off, and that Book of Eli writer Gary Whitta would be writing the script. We now know that they were working on Rogue One, but at the time the trades wondered if they were making a Boba Fett movie, a Yoda movie, or maybe a Han Solo film. Meanwhile, the studio also gave the movie a December 16th, 2016 release date. Whitta finished writing the first draft of the screenplay by January 2015, and then he left the project. He ended up getting a story by credit as well. About a Boy and Ants writer Chris Weitz was then brought on to do rewrites, and in March 2015, Disney announced the movie's title, Rogue One. The press speculated based on the title that the movie would be about Rogue Squadron starfighters, but they were wrong again. Gareth Edwards later pointed out the title's triple meaning. Rogue One recalls the Rogue Squadron, it described Jyn Erso's personality, and it references the movie itself, which is outside the main Skywalker saga storyline. During the movie's development, everyone who read the script felt like it needed to end with the heroes dying. But Gareth Edwards was worried Disney wouldn't allow this dark ending, so he considered a version where they survived. Ultimately, Lucasfilm gave him the okay to kill everybody. As he told Empire, we thought we weren't going to be allowed to, but Kathleen Kennedy and everyone at Disney were like, yeah, it makes sense. I guess they have to because they're not in A New Hope. Christopher McQuarrie, Scott C. Burns, and Michael Arndt also contributed to the script at various points of development, but most importantly, the Bourne Identity writer Tony Gilroy was also brought on to work on the screenplay. He ended up playing a major role in making the movie, but I'll get to that a little bit later. Lucasfilm made the decision early on that this film wouldn't have an opening crawl as to set it apart from the Skywalker saga. Edwards and Lucasfilm looked at a number of notable brunettes for Jyn Erso, including Tatiana Maslany and Rooney Mara, before landing on Felicity Jones. Aaron Paul and Edgar Ramirez were considered for Cassian Andor, which went to Diego Luna. Sam Claflin was also being looked at for an unspecified part, but ultimately he wasn't cast. The movie features returning Star Wars actors including Jimmy Smits, Genevieve O'Reilly, Anthony Daniels, Jimmy V, James Earl Jones, David Ankrum. Carrie Fisher, who died a few weeks after the film's release, appears via digital recreation and archival audio. Angus McInnes and Drew Henley are featured as Gold Leader Dutch Vander and Red Leader Garvin Dryce via unused footage from A New Hope. McInnes returned to record new dialogue, but for Henley, who died in 2015, they used archival audio. Star Wars veteran Warwick Davis cameos in a new role. Dave Filoni voiced Chopper in the movie, and Last Jedi director Rian Johnson makes a cameo as a Death Star technician. Also, the movie quite controversially revived deceased actor Peter Cushing as Grand Moff Tarkin via digital effects. Disney obtained permission from Cushing's estate to use his likeness in the film, and his family had input on the final product, including small, subtle adjustments. Guy Henry did the motion capture for Tarkin and voiced the character. Filming on Rogue One began August 8th, 2015 at Pinewood Studios in Buckinghamshire, England, under the codename Los Alamos. Another Oppenheimer reference, Los Alamos is where the atomic bomb was developed. They shot on digital 6K Arri Alexa 65 cameras using Ultra Panavision 70 lenses. The crew also went on location around the world. They shot in Iceland, filming some at Krafla Volcanic Crater. They went to the Maldives to represent the tropical planet Scarif, and to Jordan to represent Jeddah. In the UK, they filmed in Pym's Park, Cardington Airfield, and London's Canary Wharf Tube Station became an Imperial base. Alan Tudyk did the motion capture for K2SO live on set. Principal photography wrapped in early 2016, but the most interesting part of Rogue One's production happened next. It seems Lucasfilm wasn't entirely happy with what Gareth Edwards had shot, and so they did extensive reshoots on the movie, beginning in June 2016, just 6 months before the film's release date. The studio paid Tony Gilroy $5 million million to do significant rewrites and direct new scenes himself. This would ultimately earn him a screenwriting credit on the movie and lead to Gilroy creating the Disney Plus series Andor. And at the time, it was reported that Gareth Edwards had been sidelined from the project. Edwards later denied those rumors and said he remained heavily involved in the movie. According to Ben Mendelsohn, the reshoots changed 20 or 30 scenes total, creating enormously different renderings. The very last scene that they shot was Darth Vader attacking the rebels at the end. It was created predominantly with digital effects. Alexandre Desplat was supposed to score the film, but because of the reshoot delays, he dropped out and Michael Giacchino stepped in. Giacchino only had 4.5 weeks to compose the movie's score. ILM did the VFX for the movie, and post-production didn't wrap until November 28, 2016, 3 weeks before the release date. After tax breaks, the movie's total budget came to $232.4 million. In early 2015, Paramount was gearing up to release Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, and because the titles were so similar, Disney agreed it would only start promoting Rogue One after Rogue Nation hit theaters. Rogue One's first trailer was viewed 30 million times in its first 29 hours online. The movie's marketing included 3 tie-in novels, a comic book adaptation, and tie-in characters in various Star Wars video games. Anticipation for the movie was pretty high. Its first day of ticket pre-sales was the second biggest of all time, behind only The Force Awakens. Rogue One opened on 4,157 screens domestic on December 16th, 2016, grossing $155 million opening weekend in North America, before going on to gross just north of $1 billion worldwide total. Deadline said the movie turned a $319.6 million profit for Disney. Critics really liked Rogue One. Today, 84% of the 460 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. Audiences agreed it got an A cinema score from theater exit polls. And George Lucas reportedly said he liked Rogue One more than The Force Awakens. The military news website Task and Purpose said this is the Star Wars film that best reflects real military service. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Sound Mixing and Best Visual Effects, losing the former to Hacksaw Ridge and the latter to The Jungle Book. In November 2018, 2 years after the film's release, Disney announced a live-action prequel series to Rogue One was in the works for the company's streaming service. Andor focused on Diego Luna's Cassian Andor joining the rebellion. Andor was created and written by Tony Gilroy, and season 1 premiered on Disney Plus in September 2022. With a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes off 608 reviews, it's been called one of the best Star Wars projects of all time. Its second and final season started in April 2025, fully circling back to where the story began with a Star Wars TV show.